we are actually running to time. Breaking news. As I was saying to some of our colleagues at the side of the stage, I was hearing of an event earlier that was running 2 hours behind, which I actually think is quite an achievement. But we are running to time, so happy days. Let me introduce our next keynote, and it's my pleasure to introduce a speaker who's joined us here at Sustainability Live before. We are joined by Paolo Tatacchi, who is from the UCL School of Management, Professor in Strategy and Sustainability and School Deputy Director. Our subject is Sustainable Companies Win, and here's why. A warm welcome for Paolo, please.
Thank you. Running on time and an Italian on stage, that's the way to disrupt things, I guess. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to go basically straight to the point. I'm here to try to share with you some views about why I believe today more than ever sustainable companies win. And I'm going to start from a small personal story. End of July, I was running an executive program at UCL, and an executive came to me and asked me the following question. He said, Paolo, but with Trump and the omnibus package, are you still going to have a job? Wow. I said, OK, this is where we are today. People believe that sustainability is dead. Interesting. But unfortunately, out there are some people that saying that sustainability is dead. And I believe we need really to challenge these negative narratives with the right narratives. And I guess the starting point is that we need the sustainable transformation of business. Let me see if I can change the slides. Because we have real problems out there. That's where we started from. We have real problems in society that we need to address. So all of you are familiar with this definition. This was offered by the UN in 1987. I guess at the time it was just a definition. Today is an existential business problem, an existential business challenge. How we create the conditions for a sustainable development, and what role business plays in that context. All of you are familiar with this agenda. I guess this agenda is of paramount importance for us. It's a very complex agenda. We do, I guess, understand that these problems are connected. We do understand that it's not easy to create the conditions for just transitions. And I can tell you that because for a number of years I've been involved as an advisor to the Italian government for on sustainable development and sustainable transformation of business. And that there are real trade-offs, for example, in the policy space that we need to address when we try to transform business and develop, I guess, fair sustainable development policies. But we also know that this agenda is an exciting one, right? I mean, there is plenty of commercial opportunities that are associated to these big transitions. And we need to mobilize a lot of capital in order to make it happen. We also know that when we address the challenges in the SDG agenda, we are addressing major business risks. And no surprise that problems like climate change are at the top of the global risks report that the World Economic Forum produces every year. So we need to keep this in mind. These are real problems, there are risks, and there are opportunities. Now, I guess when you look at the SDG agenda, is 17 areas of action, something like 167, if I remember well, targets. And we are making progress, but the question is that enough? So let me ask you a question. Let's say, how many targets are on track? How many of you believe that 50% of targets are on track? Raise your hand. How many of you believe is 40% of targets that are on track? 30%? 25%? 20%? 15%. We are getting there. 12%. So if you look at the most recent reports from the UN, they say that only 12% of targets are on track. And they say that we made good progress, whatever that means, on more or less half of them. Okay? So what this means is that we are going in the right direction, but unfortunately, not fast enough. Okay? So when we speak about the sustainable transformation of business, speed is a factor we need to keep in mind. Okay? Speed. Sorry, I was here. Now, I don't know, but I guess these type of pictures are becoming the norm, right? I mean, and I guess they should be a reminder for us of the real problems we have out there, and that's why we need to bring business on board. This is a picture that probably most of you have seen. This is about a year ago. It's Valencia in Spain, and the terrible disaster that took place there 11 months ago. I mean, if you look at 2024 as a year, I basically saw research that suggested that there were something like 600 extreme weather events reported, 150 classified as unprecedented in terms of power. What's the cost of these events? The White House estimated $54 billion in 2024. Okay, so a lot of money. We need to act because paying for the consequences doesn't make any kind of sense. But we also need to remember that when we speak about sustainability in business, it's not just about the environment. There are other problems that we need to face and address. For example, working conditions in supply chains. Again, this is an iconic picture that probably many of you have seen. This is suicide nets at Foxconn Technology Group when they basically had their big scandal in 2011. Many people say that these suicide nets are still there. But again, that's another dimension of sustainability that we need to address. So I think there is a real problem, and the speed of action is a factor we need to keep in mind. But the second factor is really key for success to get business on board. What is the factor? What's the big problem when you speak to executives? Cost, correct. We always go back to money. I've worked in this space from 2007. It really started during my PhD. It became my passion. I was the first professor with the word sustainability at Imperial College Business School, the first now at UCL. And I'm not just an academic. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a very active consultant. And I talk and work with organizations on a daily basis. And what I learned over the years, probably the hard way, is that companies will never engage in a real way with sustainable transformation if they have the perception that it goes against profit. So the key for success is to make it work from a profit perspective. And that's why I dedicated the last 5 years of my research to basically, developing ideas, tools, frameworks to substantially help companies to integrate sustainability into business strategy in a way that works. Okay, and I believe this is really key for success. Now, all of you are probably very passionate about the topic, and you realize that things are different today when you look at, for example, the topic of sustainability in business. I can't count how many companies were approaching me 10 years ago for the development of greenwashing initiatives. I stopped counting. But I guess we moved on from that, right? I mean, greenwashing is very dangerous today, okay? And the reality is that probably for the first time, there is a real momentum driven by the huge amount of pressure that is coming from a variety of stakeholders. So for the first time, you have probably pressure coming from big clients, big organizations. For the first time, probably you have pressure coming from some investors, because unfortunately, not all investors value sustainability. You do have probably pressure coming from employees, because today, if you don't have a sustainable brand, it's very hard to attract the talent. So for the first time, basically the pressure is coming from a number of directions, and that is really helping companies to build the business case. And I guess this has led probably all of us to a different understanding of what modern sustainability is. This was a few years back the topic of my TED Talk and the topic of one of my books, where I basically offered a new definition of modern corporate sustainability. But my, I guess, understanding is that modern corporate sustainability is truly a topic that builds on 4 pillars. The first one is purpose, another nice buzzword used by marketeers for greenwashing. But if you are pragmatic and you look at the research, the emerging research, you will see that purpose-driven organizations, or companies that are perceived as being purpose-driven, have a better financial performance. And purpose-led brands have a better ability to connect with customers that has a positive impact on long-term sales for the business. Okay? So purpose today is important if you run an organization, and it should be part of the strategy, part of the identity of an organization today. The second topic is a well-known topic, is the concept of shared value creation that came from colleagues at our university. This idea that today, if you wanted to be a competitive organization, is not enough anymore to create the value just for shareholders. We need to create the value for a plurality of stakeholders. And organizations that will win in the future are going to be stakeholder-oriented enterprises. And I guess then, of course, if we wanted to build better organizations, we need organizations that integrate ESG factors into decision-making at all levels in all functions. And that's challenging, because it is a big change management process. And at the end, I guess the fourth factor is that sustainability cannot remain disconnected from real strategy. Therefore, you need to find a way to connect the two things. And if you do it correctly, sustainability can truly impact positively on the competitiveness of a company. So this is a definition at the time I offered in my book 4 years ago. And when you look at this definition, you hopefully see that this topic is not against profit, but sustainable transformation work with and for profit. So let's try to understand what is really driving the business case today for change and why sustainable companies win. So this is my very last book that was published in February. And in the book, I basically dedicate a chapter to this topic of the business case and provide a lot of research and thoughts on what I believe are the 5 key elements of the business case for change. Okay, so I'm going to basically go through all of them very quickly with you today. Of course, I guess regulation is a factor, but not everywhere, let's be honest. If you are, a company in maybe Italy, where I come from, regulation could be a driver of your sustainability agenda. But if you are in the US, where regulation is not that strong, let's put it this way, I guess you don't have that driver, right? But what is interesting is that the type of a regulatory approach that, for example, the European Union is promoting has got an impact and a ripple effect on organizations globally, okay? I was in China presenting my book in May, and I was bombarded with questions in Beijing because probably for the first time, they start feeling the pressure of the EU directives, the CBAM, the CSRD, and so on. So this is, is a driver for many companies, some companies, but hopefully not the only driver. I believe if companies engage with sustainable transformation because of compliance, they miss a lot of the value that sustainable transformation can offer. I think in the kind of a compliance legal space, there is another interesting topic. And I wrote about a year ago an op-ed for the Financial Times on the growth of climate litigations. Okay? And today, for example, I'm consulting for an airline, and they are becoming more exposed to these type of climate litigations. Okay, and this is like literally a new tool for climate action. Okay, so there is a kind of real pressure out there. Of course, sustainability is good for your reputation. Again, if this is the only driver, greenwashing is waiting for you at the door. Okay. So I guess it should be part of the business case, but it's probably the last element of the business case, or should be the last element of the business case. This is where I believe things become particularly interesting. For example, opportunity to reduce your costs thanks to sustainable transformation. I guess when you speak about sustainable operations, it's just, again, a fancy word to say optimized operations, okay? What we call sustainable operations, when I studied the mechanical engineering 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was called the optimization of operations. And, manufacturing models like lean manufacturing, they really, promote the optimization of business operations. So, of course, if you basically save on water, save on energy, save on materials, at the end, you can increase your profit. There is an opportunity there. But I guess there is also an opportunity to reduce the cost of capital, because there is a real opportunity there to access capital that is, given with ESG criteria at lower rates. But what, in my opinion, is really interesting and is going to really be a core topic in the next 10 years, together with nature, is the topic of circular business models. Because today, there is an emerging, growing amount of research that is suggesting that the circular business models can really help organizations to achieve cost savings. So it means that these are very smart investments. Okay, it's not just about developing good initiatives or recycling. There is more into that. And I guess we also understand today, and we do have a lot of data suggesting that the markets do reward sustainability. Okay, so not only today there is good evidence that financial performance and the ESG performance are positively correlated. But we see, for example, products and services that are marketed as sustainable growing much faster than traditional products in both Europe and, for example, the US. Okay, so we need to keep that in mind, because that's basically, there is a commercial opportunity out there. I've done research, worked with Enel Group, is one of the giants in the renewable energy space. I guess when you look at the story of the company and the type of moves they made in the last 15 years, it's a truly fantastic story of transformation. Okay, they moved from an approach to sustainability based on CSR to basically embrace, a vision where they wanted to be a key player of the energy transition, connected the topic of sustainability to the topic of innovation, managed, to innovate in areas like finance. Okay, Enel Group was the first corporate in the world to issue an SDG-linked bond. And in 2 years, they raised 19 billion euros. Okay? So when you look at these journeys of transformation, that's, I guess, when you recognize smart strategies and smart and visionary leaders. Okay? This is what sustainability should be about. Should be about a smart business. Now, I truly believe that the sustainability space today is where winners are made. And let's start from this. This is a very iconic cover. I use it in many of my strategy modules. We go back to 2007, when Forbes was celebrating Nokia achieving a very important milestone at the time, 1 billion customers in the planet. For context, the population back then was 7 billion people. The market share of Nokia in 2007 in Western countries was above 70%. Okay? 2-3 years later, they were non-existing in that market. So this story teaches what I call rule number 0 in strategy, which is what made you successful in the past is not going to necessarily make you successful in the future. What that means is that drivers of competitiveness change over time. And today, still, many organizations underestimate the impact of sustainable transformation and the value of sustainable transformation. And in my opinion, that is very risky. I also believe that sustainability is the objective, but the way you get there, the way you achieve sustainable transformation is innovation. And I love this concept that was promoted by MIT years ago of sustainability-oriented innovation. This means all your innovation projects in your business should help you with the sustainability agenda. Okay? If you have an innovation project that is not adding something to your ESG roadmap, there is something wrong with that project. We go back to the topic of time. I believe there should be a genuine sense of urgency. So before I spoke about the business case being made by 5 factors: compliance, reputation, cost-saving opportunities, the market risks, and market opportunities. But the reality, from a strategy perspective, what really matters is the risks you face and the opportunities you can explore. So the shared value at stake. And if you go down to these 2 dimensions, you will see that in the recent years, we have seen the companies developing very ambitious, real sustainability strategies. They were first movers. And we have seen companies following. Of course, the first movers and followers, they try to create the conditions for some kind of competitive advantage created by sustainable transformation. But the reality is that today there are many organizations that don't have a sustainability vision. And in my opinion, that is a very risky situation, because if you are a late transformer, you basically will face in the future all of the risks associated to sustainability, And you're not going to be able to explore the commercial opportunities because they've been explored by the first movers and the followers. So the paradox is that you might end up in a situation where the topic of sustainability becomes a driver of competitive disadvantage instead of a competitive advantage. So time is important. This is my last slide. In my book, basically, I speak about the strategic behavior of companies. And I kind of cluster them in 4 groups. Companies that engage with sustainable transformation simply as a compliance topic, quite a few. Companies that do a little bit more. So I don't publish a sustainability report because it's mandatory. I publish a sustainability report because I've seen my competitors doing that. So they feel the pressure from peers. So they wanted to align to what they perceive are emerging best practices. If you're in that space, your basically attitude is very tactical, and you tend to be reactive. In my opinion, the real value is created when sustainability is used for differentiation of strategies, the differentiation of business models, or if you push it to a point where it becomes a driver of your competitive advantage. So this is kind of really the time, the decade for action, okay? And I believe we really need a collective push to keep this agenda central in business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paolo. I have a very, very scientific way of measuring how effective a keynote presentation is, and that is what I call the phones outification ratio. Feel free to use that in any future works. Full credit expected. That is the number of phones that come out taking pictures of people's slides. And so far, you had an 8.5 on that very scientific scale. We do have time for a couple of quick questions if anyone has any from the room. If not, I know I certainly do. I can't see any. Oh, we have one in the middle there.
Thanks. I'm really interested in how conversations about sustainability can focus on value as opposed to cost. I work in the food and drink sector. We buy large amounts of barley as a raw material from farmers. It's the same quality from a technical specification when we buy sustainable barley versus non-sustainable barley. So I think this is probably most relevant to when we're talking about procurement and scope 3 emissions. But as a business, how do you extract value from that? Because reality, it often is a cost. It may not be longer term, but it is an immediate cost.
Yeah. I also accept easy questions, by the way. Actually, I'm going to answer you with a real story. So last year, I spent a lot of time with an organization called the CMA CGM. They are, one of the big, leaders in logistics, headquartered in Marseille. And I was there basically training their global managers on the topic of, sustainable transformation. At a certain point in June, there was a report published by McKinsey that was focused on green logistics and was suggesting that today in the US, 60% of corporate clients are ready to pay more for green logistics services. And we had a huge debate with the group of executives I had concerning if that was a real estimate or not. Okay, someone was saying 60% is far too much. And I asked, okay, but what would have been the percentage 3 years ago? And the answer was very clear, 0. Everybody agreed on that, okay? So I guess when you speak about value and how you can extract value, you also need to take into account that things in this space are moving super fast, okay? So when you look at, for example, how you can, include, the sustainability value in your pricing strategies, I guess that today there are options that were not on the table 2-3 years ago. Okay, so I think is really why I stress this point of having commercial strategies, bankable plans, associated to sustainability, because you need to be able to build that type of business case. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to transform your procurement or commercial activities.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I'm afraid we are going to have to go to the networking break.
I'm going to be around if you want to talk to me.
Exactly. So just one quick announcement to make before we wrap things on this stage before the networking break. Starting now in room 1, the workshop, From Chaos to Clarity, Solving Emissions and Circularity Reporting Challenges. That's with eco-engineers. That's now just got started in workshop room number 1. Other than that, I will be heading off after this session because I've got to go and get ready to host the awards tonight. So for everyone who's joined me here on stage 1 over the last few days, thank you so much from me, but it's not about me, it's about Paolo. Thank you so much for joining.
Enjoy the rest of the event.